It had been a long, taxing year, one filled with personal struggles and moments of self-doubt, but Christmas always brought with it a sense of hope. For most people, Christmas was a time to be surrounded by family and friends, but for me, it had always been a bit more complicated. I had spent years struggling with my speech, and the idea of spending time with my wife's family felt like a monumental challenge. I stuttered. It wasn't something that defined me, but it was always there, lurking in the background, making me nervous in social situations. Some days, it felt as though my tongue had a mind of its own, refusing to cooperate when I needed it most. It wasn't a secret, Sarah knew about it, but I always felt that she didn't fully understand what it felt like to be on the other side of that struggle. Sure, she was supportive, but there were times when I could sense that she didn't quite grasp the weight of my insecurity. That's why I was determined that this Christmas would be different. I was going to face my fears and make an effort to connect with her family. I wanted to show them that I was more than just someone who struggled with words. I was ready to be a part of something bigger than myself. I had worked so hard on controlling my stutter, attending speech therapy, practicing in front of the mirror, pushing through the self-doubt. The Christmas dinner was set at her parents' house, a cozy, rustic home in the suburbs, filled with the smells of Christmas ham and cinnamon. The tree in the corner was adorned with twinkling lights, and there was a sense of warmth and joy in the air. Sarah's parents, Jim and Linda, were welcoming and kind. They had always been patient with me, but tonight, I wanted to be better than just a guest at their table. I wanted to feel like I belonged. Sarah's siblings, too, were there: Mark, the older brother, who was always easy to talk to, and Lisa, the younger sister, who had a sharp wit and an infectious laugh. Everyone was in high spirits, chatting and exchanging stories as the meal was served. I tried to remain calm, despite the rising anxiety in my chest. It was just a dinner, after all. Just another family gathering. But to me, it felt like the test of a lifetime. As we sat down at the long dining table, I found myself struggling to keep my nerves in check. I glanced at Sarah, who gave me a soft smile, reassuring me. That was all I needed. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my hands as I reached for my glass of water. The conversation flowed easily at first, nothing too complicated, just general chatter about the year gone by. Then, Jim asked me about a work project I had been involved in, a major presentation I had spent weeks preparing for. I could feel the sweat starting to form on my palms, but I couldn't avoid the question. I had to answer. This was my chance to prove myself. I opened my mouth to speak, but my tongue felt thick, and the words didn't come out the way I had planned. I was working on a PPR project, I stammered, immediately feeling the familiar tightening in my chest. And then it happened. Out of nowhere, Sarah mimicked me, mocking my stutter in a high-pitched, exaggerated imitation. I was working on a PPR project, she repeated, her voice dripping with a sarcastic tone that I hadn't expected. She wasn't joking in a playful way. She was making fun of me, making me the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. My heart stopped. My breath hitched in my throat. The laughter that followed from her family was like a punch to the gut. Jim chuckled, Linda smiled indulgently, and Mark and Lisa shared knowing glances. They didn't see the harm. They didn't understand the gravity of what had just happened. Sarah's laughter filled the room, and I felt as though I were sinking into the floor. My face flushed with humiliation, and I could feel the heat creeping up from my neck to my cheeks. The weight of the moment threatened to suffocate me, and I didn't know how to react. I wanted to speak up, to say something, but the words were stuck. I thought Sarah had understood me better than anyone. I thought she knew how deeply my stutter affected me, how hard I fought every day to feel normal. But there she was, mocking me in front of her family. I felt betrayed, my trust shattered in an instant. The silence that followed her mockery felt oppressive. My stomach twisted into knots, and I could barely focus on anything else. I wanted to leave, to escape from the mocking laughter that reverberated around the table. But I stayed. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to ruin Christmas. So I stayed silent, the words trapped inside me, unable to escape. It wasn't until much later that night, after we had returned home and Sarah was getting ready for bed, that I finally confronted her. My hands were still trembling, and my voice wavered as I spoke. Sarah, what was that? Why did you mock me like that? In front of your family? She looked at me with a confused expression. What do you mean? It was just a joke. You're too sensitive. The words stung more than anything she could have said. It wasn't a joke to me. You mocked me, Sarah. You made me feel like I wasn't even worth respecting. In front of your family, you made fun of something I've worked so hard to overcome. Her face softened, but she didn't apologize. Instead, she shrugged it off, as though it was no big deal. You're overreacting. It wasn't meant to hurt you. I thought you would find it funny. But I didn't find it funny. I didn't know how to explain it to her. How her actions, the way she casually mocked me, had ripped through the fragile confidence I had built. I had spent years trying to overcome my fear of speaking in front of others, and in one moment, she had torn that down. The rest of the evening was a blur. I couldn't focus on anything. My mind kept replaying the scene at dinner, the way her voice had sounded, the way her family had laughed. I tried to enjoy the rest of the evening, but I couldn't. The humiliation sat heavy on my chest, and I couldn't shake it. The days after Christmas were a blur. The atmosphere in our home had changed, and I could feel the weight of everything that had happened at dinner hanging between us. It wasn't just what Sarah had done that upset me. It was her reaction afterward. The way she dismissed my feelings, as if it was no big deal, made me feel invisible. It wasn't like this had been the first time something like this had happened. There had been other instances in the past where Sarah made light of my stutter or laughed off my struggles, but this felt different. This time, it wasn't just a passing joke. It felt like a betrayal, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in the way I saw her. That night, I barely slept. My mind kept replaying the scene at the dinner table, the way she had mocked me and the way her family had laughed along with her. I couldn't help but wonder if they all secretly thought I was some kind of joke. I had always felt a sense of inadequacy around them, but I had tried my best to mask it. I had made an effort to be part of the conversation, to show that I wasn't defined by my stutter. But now, after that incident, I felt like I had lost everything I had worked for. The next morning, Sarah didn't mention anything about what had happened. She acted as if it were just another day, as if nothing had changed. I, on the other hand, couldn't stop thinking about it. I felt trapped in my own home, suffocated by the silence between us. I tried to carry on as usual, but it was impossible to ignore the growing tension. I spent most of the day in my office, trying to distract myself with work. But it didn't help. Every time I tried to focus, my mind would wander back to that Christmas dinner, to Sarah's mocking laughter, to the way she had made me feel like I didn't matter. By the time the evening rolled around, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to talk to her. I needed to tell her how much her actions had hurt me and how I couldn't move on until we had a real conversation about it. I waited until she was in the kitchen, putting away the dishes from dinner. I stood in the doorway, watching her for a moment, trying to gather the courage to speak. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, my voice coming out softer than I intended. I had rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times, but now that it was here, the words felt too heavy. She turned around, surprised by the seriousness in my tone. "What's going on? You've been distant all day." "I'm upset about what happened at Christmas," I said, my words slowly coming together despite the nerves that still gripped me. "The way you mocked me in front of your family, it hurt. It hurt more than you'll ever understand." She frowned, clearly not expecting this reaction. "Come on, you're being dramatic. It was just a joke. I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know you didn't mean to hurt me," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "But that doesn't change the fact that it did. You made me feel small. You made me feel like a joke." She sighed, clearly frustrated by my reaction. "I'm not going to keep apologizing for something that wasn't a big deal. You need to lighten up." But her words stung more than I could have imagined. How could she not see how much it mattered? How could she be so dismissive of something that had caused me so much pain? I took a deep breath, my chest tight with emotion. "I don't know if I can keep pretending everything is okay, Sarah. This isn't just about Christmas dinner. It's about the way you've treated me in the past. The way you brush off my feelings as if they don't matter." For the first time, I saw something shift in her eyes. She paused, as though she was really hearing me for the first time. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I've been hiding how much it hurts when you make fun of my stutter. I've been hiding how much it hurts when you laugh about it like it's not a big deal. But it is. It's a big deal to me." The silence between us was heavy, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I didn't expect her to fully understand right away, but I needed her to try. I needed her to see me, to see the person I was, not just the person she thought I was. Sarah took a step toward me, her eyes softening. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice quieter now. "I didn't realize how much it hurt you. I thought I was just being funny. I didn't mean to make you feel that way." But her apology felt hollow. It was too little, too late. The damage had already been done, and I couldn't just forget it. "I don't know if I can just forgive you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's not about you being sorry, Sarah. It's about how you made me feel. It's about how I felt in that moment, and how I still feel now." She looked at me, her face a mixture of confusion and regret. But there was something else there too, a flicker of something darker that I couldn't quite place. "I didn't mean to hurt you, I swear," she repeated, but the words felt rehearsed, not genuine. The doubt in her eyes was clear. Was she really sorry? Or was this just another attempt to brush everything under the rug and pretend it hadn't happened? "I don't know if you really get it," I said, my voice cracking under the pressure. "I don't know if you ever will." Sarah stepped back, a frown pulling at her lips. "What are you saying? Are you saying we can't move past this?" I didn't know how to answer that. Part of me wanted to believe that we could move past it, that we could work through this like we had worked through other issues before. But another part of me wondered if this was the beginning of the end. I had been silenced for too long. I had been hiding my true feelings, and now I was afraid that the damage had already been done. "I don't know," I said, my heart heavy. "I just don't know anymore." The following days felt like a long stretch of empty space between Sarah and me. The atmosphere in our home was strained. Every conversation felt like walking on eggshells. No matter how hard I tried to keep things normal, it was impossible to ignore the tension that hung in the air. I could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing down on me every moment. We hadn't had a real conversation since that night in the kitchen. She had apologized, but it felt like something deeper was at play. There was a part of me that wanted to forgive her, to believe that she didn't mean what she had done. But the other part of me was struggling with the realization that our marriage might not be what I thought it was. I started spending more time at work, using the long hours as an escape. My job had always been a refuge for me, a place where I could focus on something other than the growing distance in my personal life. But even at work, my mind was consumed by thoughts of Sarah and everything that had happened. I found myself wondering if she really cared about me, or if she had just been going through the motions all these years. One evening, after a particularly difficult day at the office, I came home to find Sarah sitting in the living room, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when I entered, but there was no warmth in her gaze. "Hey," I said softly, trying to sound casual despite the storm brewing inside me. "Hey," she replied, her voice flat. There was no emotion in it, just an emptiness that mirrored my own feelings. I stood in the doorway, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to walk away, to avoid the conversation altogether. But I knew I couldn't keep running from it. I had to face it head on. "I think we need to talk," I said, my heart pounding. "About us." Sarah set her phone down and crossed her arms, her expression hardening. "I thought we already talked about everything," she replied, her voice tinged with frustration. I said I was sorry. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "It's not just about your apology. It's about how I feel. It's about how I can't just pretend like everything's fine after what happened." She stood up, her face hardening. "I can't believe you're still on about this. I told you I'm sorry. What else do you want from me?" The anger in her voice took me by surprise. It wasn't just anger, it was something colder, something more distant. It felt like she was shutting me out, like she was unwilling to even try to understand where I was coming from. "I want you to understand why it hurt me," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "I want you to acknowledge that what you did wasn't just a joke. It was cruel. And it's not just about that one moment, Sarah. It's about the way you've treated me for years. The way you've brushed off my feelings like they don't matter." She looked at me, her eyes narrowing. "I don't have time for this. I'm tired of having the same conversation over and over. I don't know what you want from me, but I can't keep doing this." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had always tried to be understanding, to listen to her, but now it felt like she was done listening to me. She was done trying. And that realization, the realization that she might not care about fixing things as much as I did, cut deeper than anything else. I took a step back, feeling the weight of her words sink in. "I just want you to see me, to really see me. Not as a joke, not as someone you can mock, but as your partner, your husband." She didn't respond. Instead, she turned away from me, walking toward the kitchen without saying another word. And just like that, the conversation was over. No resolution, no understanding. Just silence. I stood there for a long time, my heart heavy with the weight of it all. It felt like a part of me had been ripped away, and there was nothing left to hold on to. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My mind was racing, torn between the pain of what had happened and the confusion of what was happening now. Was this the end? Was I really just another thing she had grown tired of? The next few days passed in a blur. We didn't speak much, and when we did, it was only about trivial things, household chores, bills, schedules. But underneath it all, I could feel the growing divide between us, and it terrified me. I had never imagined that our marriage would come to this, that we would reach a point where we couldn't even have an honest conversation. And yet, despite everything, I found myself holding on to a flicker of hope. Maybe she didn't mean it. Maybe this was just a phase, something we could work through. But deep down, I knew that the trust between us had been shattered, and I wasn't sure if it could ever be repaired. Silence had become a third person in our house, louder than any fight, heavier than any insult. I would wake up in the morning to the sound of Sarah clinking coffee cups in the kitchen. No good morning. No kiss, not even a glance. Just routine. Mechanical. Emotionless. I used to believe that love survived on shared laughter, memories, and small touches. But now, I was starting to realize that love could also die. Not in loud arguments, but in the cold, empty spaces between two people who once knew each other deeply. I began noticing little things. Her phone was always face down. Her messages made her smile, but never when I was the one texting her. Her weekly grocery trips started taking hours, even when the fridge didn't need much. One day, I went to grab a charger from her bag and found a receipt from a fancy restaurant, one we'd never been to together. Dated just 2 nights ago. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe she went with a friend. Maybe her sister. But something deep in my gut whispered otherwise. Still, I told myself I was just being paranoid. I didn't want to be that husband. The one who snoops. The one who accuses without evidence. But it was getting harder to breathe under the weight of doubt. One Friday afternoon, I left work early. I told my team I wasn't feeling well, which honestly wasn't a lie. I drove around the city for a while, trying to decide whether I should just go home or do something I never thought I'd do. Eventually, I parked 2 blocks away from her favorite cafe. She had mentioned having a casual dinner planned that night with a coworker. The same coworker she'd been texting quite a bit lately. I waited. I felt ashamed just sitting there, as if I were violating something sacred in our marriage. But I had to know. If I was crazy, then fine. I'd rather be crazy and wrong than right and devastated. About 30 minutes later, I saw her walk out of the cafe. She wasn't alone. She was with a man, mid-30s, clean-shaven, confident. She laughed at something he said, and then, God, it happened. She reached out and touched his arm in that way she used to touch mine. Familiar. Intimate. I felt a lump form in my throat as they stood close, talking like people who had nothing to hide. Then they hugged. Not just a friendly hug. A long, meaningful one. His hand stayed on her waist. Her face leaned into his neck like it belonged there. And just like that, I felt the ground shift beneath me. I didn't confront her. I couldn't. Not yet. I needed time. I needed clarity. I drove home in silence, my hands trembling. Everything suddenly made sense. Her distance, her coldness, the way she mocked me in front of her family like I didn't matter. I kept thinking about the Christmas dinner again. How easily she tore into me with laughter. I used to believe she'd just made a poor decision in front of people. But now, it felt like that moment was a glimpse into a deeper truth. She no longer respected me. And maybe she no longer loved me. Over the weekend, I acted like nothing happened. I smiled. I cooked breakfast. I even offered to help her with laundry, just to keep the illusion going while I planned my next move. Sunday night, as we both lay in bed staring in different directions, I asked quietly, "Do you love me?" There was a pause. A long one. Then, she turned to face me. "What kind of question is that?" "An honest one," I replied, trying to keep my voice from cracking. "Do you still love me, Sarah?" She sighed and rolled onto her back, eyes fixed on the ceiling. "I don't know," she whispered. Those 3 words broke me more than any "I hate you" ever could. "I think I'm just tired," she continued. "We've been going in circles. And honestly, I don't feel like the same person anymore." I wanted to say, "Neither do I." But instead, I just nodded. Okay. Neither of us spoke after that. I stared at the ceiling for hours, my mind running wild. She didn't deny it. She didn't lie. And that scared me more than anything. On Monday, I took a day off work and went to see a lawyer. It felt surreal, sitting in that cold office with divorce brochures stacked on the table. But I needed to understand my options. If she wanted out, I wasn't going to be blindsided again. Not like the Christmas dinner. Not like the cafe. The lawyer was kind but direct. "Have you considered a private investigator? It's not uncommon, especially if there are assets involved." I shook my head. I don't want to ruin her life. I just want the truth. She nodded. Sometimes the truth already ruins everything. That evening, when I came home, Sarah was in the kitchen, humming. It sounded fake, forced, like someone pretending to play house. She turned and smiled when she saw me. "Hey, I was thinking we could have dinner together tonight. Like really sit down and talk." My stomach twisted. "Talk? Now?" "Sure," I said. "Sounds good." We sat down at the table like strangers. She served pasta, poured wine, and made small talk about a movie she watched. I nodded, listened, replied when necessary. Halfway through the meal, she looked up at me and said, "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" I stared at her for a moment. So calm. So normal. "I could ask you the same," I said slowly. "You seem distant." She paused, setting her fork down. "Look, if this is about Christmas again." "It's not." "Then what is it?" I leaned forward. "I know about him." Her eyes widened, just a flicker. Then she composed herself. "What are you talking about?" "You don't have to lie," I said, my voice soft. "I saw you. At the cafe. Friday night." Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She looked away. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." Silence. Then, "We've been talking for a while. Just talking. But yeah, it's more than that now." My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "Do you love him?" "I don't know," she whispered. "But I feel seen when I'm with him." Those words stung deeper than anything else she could have said. Seen. Like I was invisible to her now. A ghost in my own home. I stood up. "I think we're done here." She looked panicked for a second. "Wait, so what now?" "I'm filing for divorce," I said. "I've already seen a lawyer. I'm not going to fight you. But I'm not going to beg you either." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "But you did," I replied. "And I don't think you're sorry." She didn't deny it. And that told me everything I needed to know. After Sarah admitted everything, I didn't sleep much that night. I didn't cry either. There was nothing left inside me that hadn't already been broken, burned, or buried. My chest was tight, my mind racing, but I stayed still in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, feeling the last threads of our marriage quietly unraveling around me. By morning, the silence between us was no longer uncomfortable. It was necessary. She stayed in the guest room without me having to ask. I suppose she knew. Or maybe she just couldn't bear to lie beside someone she no longer loved. And I couldn't lie beside someone I no longer trusted. The next day, I began packing. Not emotionally. God no, I was nowhere near healing, but physically. I started gathering documents. Bank records. Titles. Insurance. I knew I had to protect myself, not because I wanted revenge, but because if Sarah had already begun mentally detaching from me, she might do the same with our shared life too. That's when I noticed something strange. The deed to our house, the one she had casually claimed was joint, was only in her name. I checked again. And again. No mistake. I remember the day we bought the house. I was deep into recovering from a job layoff and couldn't contribute much financially. Sarah had just inherited some money from her late aunt and used it for the down payment. She told me then, "This house is for us, not just me. Don't worry about the paperwork, it's all ours." I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? Turns out, that trust cost me a roof over my head that I went back to the lawyer, this time with a folder full of documents. She glanced through them, brows furrowed. "She never added your name to the deed. That means technically, She owns the house outright. So if she wants to sell it, I asked. She can, the lawyer nodded. And she wouldn't need your permission. A pit opened in my stomach. She already told me she sold it, I whispered. Said she'd found a buyer. I thought she was bluffing. The lawyer leaned back. If that sale goes through, you could be left with nothing. Especially if she rushes it before divorce proceedings begin. Do you have any shared assets, joint accounts, savings? I nodded. Yes. Our main savings and retirement fund are joint. Then freeze them, she said firmly. Today, before she drains them. I walked out of the office that day, more numb than angry. It wasn't just the betrayal of love. It was betrayal of everything. Every dollar I saved, every hour I worked overtime, every sacrifice I made while she figured herself out, was now being weaponized against me. That evening, I returned home, and the house suddenly looked different. Not because it had changed, but because I now realized it never truly belonged to me. I sat in the living room and looked around at the photos on the wall, wedding pictures, vacation selfies, even a couple of silly candid shots where Sarah had taken the camera mid-laugh. All lies now. Or maybe not lies, but souvenirs from a life that once felt real but had quietly expired long ago. I'm leaving next week, Sarah said from the hallway, suitcase in hand. I looked up, unsurprised. Moving in with him? She didn't respond. Just looked away. Thanks for the heads up, I muttered. I'll transfer your things to a storage unit, she added, voice cold and formal. I already made arrangements, I replied. She nodded and turned to go. I didn't say goodbye. She didn't either. And just like that, 21 years walked out the door. I moved into a small rental on the edge of town. 1 bedroom, peeling paint, a heater that moaned louder than my heartbreak. But it was mine. And more importantly, it was quiet. No passive-aggressive silence. No fake laughs. Just peace. I went back to work. Threw myself into long hours. Said yes to every project. My coworkers noticed the change, and while some were supportive, others quietly speculated. Midlife crisis, one guy whispered when he thought I wasn't listening. If only he knew. One evening, about 2 weeks after the separation, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't pick up. Hello. Mr. Gaines, a woman's voice asked. This is Dana from Wellsford Realty. I'm handling the closing paperwork for your property. I just need your signature for final release before the sale goes through. My breath caught. I never agreed to sell, I said. A pause. Oh, I was told you were co-owner. I'm not, I said flatly. Apparently, my wife kept the deed in her name. Another pause, longer this time. I see. Well, I'm very sorry. We were under the impression the sale was mutually approved. I hung up without another word. That's when it hit me. She was trying to erase me. Completely. From the house. From the memories. From everything we built. The next day, I returned to the lawyer and handed her the realtor's message. She's pushing this through fast, I said. My lawyer looked through some legal documents. There's a loophole here, she muttered. Even though your name isn't on the deed, if you can prove significant contributions to the property, financial or otherwise, we can file a motion to contest the sale or demand compensation during the divorce proceedings. I built that backyard, I said. Every tile, every fence post, every plant. She didn't even know how to hold a shovel. Perfect, she replied, typing fast. We'll include that. Any receipts, any photos, any bank transfers. We fight back. I nodded. I was ready. Weeks passed and something changed in me. I started going to therapy. At first, I hated it, talking to a stranger about my failures, my heartbreak, my shattered self-worth. But over time, it started helping. I wasn't just grieving Sarah. I was grieving me, the man I used to be before I shrank to fit her expectations. I picked up my old hobbies again, woodworking, guitar, even a little hiking. I had space now. To breathe. To grow. To rebuild. One night, after weeks of legal back and forth, Sarah called. Why are you contesting the sale? She asked, her voice bitter. Because I deserve more than a thank you and a storage key, I replied calmly. I helped build that life too, she scoffed. You're making this harder than it needs to be. You already made it hard, I said. I'm just refusing to let you walk away without facing what you did. Another pause. Then quieter. I never wanted it to end like this. Neither did I. And I meant it. But just because you don't want something to end badly doesn't mean you didn't start the fire. The court date arrived. Sarah showed up in a crisp blazer, makeup flawless, flanked by her new boyfriend like this was some sort of twisted red carpet. I didn't flinch. I presented every receipt, every photo, every bank statement. My lawyer delivered her argument with poise. Sarah's lawyer tried to minimize my role, but the judge wasn't buying it. In the end, I won partial compensation for the house sale and retained full access to our shared savings. At least what was left of it. It wasn't a total victory, but it wasn't a defeat either. More than anything, it was closure. After the court proceedings ended, I walked out of the courthouse into the crisp autumn air. For the first time in months, I felt light. Free. Not because the pain was gone, but because I finally realized the pain didn't define me. Sarah may have tried to erase me from our home, our story, and her future, but she couldn't erase me. I was still standing, still breathing, still rebuilding. And the best part? I wasn't done yet. The day I finally packed my bags wasn't dramatic. There were no screaming matches, no tears thrown against the walls. Just silence. The kind of silence that hums in your ears when your heart has cried itself dry. Sarah stood at the doorway, arms crossed, eyes distant. There was no pleading, no apology, not the kind I needed. Maybe she had already moved on in her heart. Or maybe she never fully understood what it meant to stand beside someone during their lowest, without mocking the weight they carried. I zipped the last of my suitcase and paused. This apartment, it held pieces of me. My late-night coffees, our anniversary dance in the kitchen, my laughter echoing after a terrible movie, and yes, even the pain, the Christmas dinner, the birthday betrayal, and the sting of my stutter being mimicked like a joke at a party. But now, this place no longer felt like home. I turned to Sarah one last time and quietly said, "I'm not leaving because I don't love you. I'm leaving because I finally love myself more than I fear being alone." She blinked, her jaw clenched. Still no words. And so I walked away. The first few weeks were hard. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment across town. Bare walls. A mattress on the floor. No cozy warmth, no shared dinners, just me and my thoughts echoing louder than ever before. But strange as it sounds, in that emptiness, I found freedom. For the first time in years, I spoke without fear. I began practicing in front of a mirror, accepting every stumble in my words. My stutter no longer embarrassed me. It reminded me I was human, real, vulnerable. And that was okay. I joined a small writers group. Remember that journal I kept? I turned those pages into stories. Raw ones. Honest ones. Stories of heartbreak, of courage, of walking away when it hurt the most. And people listened. They didn't mock. They leaned in. They cried. I realized then my voice mattered. Even if it broke. Even if it wavered. One night, I wrote Sarah a letter. I never mailed it, but it said everything I needed to say. Dear Sarah, thank you. Thank you for the good moments, for the laughter, for the lessons, even the painful ones. You taught me that love, when not watered with respect, withers into resentment. You taught me that silence can be louder than shouting. That support isn't just shown in public, but in private, when the world turns away and only your partner remains. I hope someday you find peace within yourself. And I hope you never make another soul feel small just to feel seen. I'm doing okay now. Maybe more than okay. I'm healing. And maybe one day, if we ever meet again, it won't be as lovers or as exes, but as people who once shared a life and learned how to let go with grace. 6 months later, I published my first short story. It was called The Stuttered Goodbye. It wasn't just about a man who walked away from a broken marriage. It was about every person who's ever felt unheard, mocked, or unloved, and still found the courage to choose themselves. It went viral. I started receiving messages from people all over. People with stutters, with scars, with shattered hearts, thanking me for telling their story, for being their voice. Funny, isn't it? The very thing that made me feel invisible in my own marriage became the thing that made me seen in the world. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't fighting to stay. It's knowing when to walk away. I don't hate Sarah. I never did. But I've learned that love shouldn't come at the cost of your self-worth. And when it does, when the one who promised to protect you becomes the one who wounds you, you owe it to yourself to leave. Not to hurt them, but to heal yourself. And maybe, just maybe, to find the version of you that was always waiting, just beyond the breaking point. The end.